Hey everybody, how's it going? Today we're going to be going over and showing you how to install the Curt Flex Air fifth wheel pin box here on our 2007 Starcraft Homestead. So a standard pin box on your trailer isn't going to have a pivoting head, it's not going to have a built-in strut, and it's not going to have an airbag. Now you're probably thinking, why do we need all this? So I wouldn't say it's a requirement, but your standard pin boxes, they're basically going to be transferring all the road shocks when we hit a pothole, we're going over some bumps in the road. Everything is going to be transferred directly to the vehicle, and you're going to be feeling all those bumps in the road. It's actually going to rely on the vehicle suspension and partly the trailer suspension. But when you add a cushioning mechanism between the truck and the trailer here, this thing is going to absorb all that road shock there, so we're not going to be transferring it to our vehicle. So overall, it's going to be making our ride that much more pleasurable, and it's also going to help maintain our fifth wheel trailer here because it's not going to be rattling around as much. A lot of those road shocks and vibrations are going to be absorbed into one of these three mechanisms here to make for an overall a smoother ride, and it's going to cut down on that chucking and jarring feeling. You're not going to have any of those issues that you would normally by upgrading your pin box. It's not only going to cut down on the wear and tear of our trailer, it's also going to cut down on the maintenance that's required for our tow vehicle, because the trailer isn't going to be bouncing around as much, therefore the suspension on our vehicle isn't going to incur that much wear. So another common question we get here at eTrailer when someone's wanting to replace their pin box is they're worried about the dimensions, whether they want to gain height or they want to decrease height, or they're looking to increase their turning radius. Now unfortunately, you really can't gain or lose anything from a new pin box because all these are going to be mirrored towards the same shape of the one they're going to be replacing, which is that Lippert 1621. Therefore, the distance from the bolt holes to the center of the kingpin here, or the distance from the bolt holes to the bottom of the skid plate is going to be the same pretty much for all Lippert 1621 pin boxes. So all of our pin box components are going to be made of a very thick and sturdy steel, and they also have a nice durable black powder coated finish, which is really going to protect our fifth wheel or our pin box here from rust and corrosion. A lot of the times you're banging these on the fifth wheel hitch trying to back them up, so they are kind of an abused item. Really, there's going to be a lot of subjected wear to these things, so you need to make sure that they're going to be stout, and it's really important that powder coating holds up, because if you nick and scratch this and expose the bare metal underneath, they will rust. Having that nice durable finish there is really going to help protect that metal from time to come. And I would also like to point out here that this fifth wheel hitch is made in the USA, so you know you're getting a quality product. So one thing you do need to be aware about with this particular pin box here and all cushion pin boxes is that you can't use any sort of fifth wheel to gooseneck adapter such as the ones that bolt to the bottom of the skid plate here. So just keep that in mind. You won't be able to use any of those adapters. So in regards to installation, this isn't really bad at all because let's face it, it's actually only 4 bolts per side. So there's no cutting, drilling, or welding whatsoever required. But these things are heavy. I mean, they can weigh a couple 100 pounds. So it is going to be hard to get the fifth wheel hitch into position and remove the old one. But if you got a couple buddies around, usually about 4 people are able to manage getting this installed in place. Obviously, the most ideal thing would be to have a forklift of some kind or some sort of lifting device. You guys can get creative here. But aside from that, nothing is particularly challenging. They're just heavy. So now that we've gone over the pin box, let's go ahead and show you how to get it installed. Before we get the pin box off, you want to go ahead and just mark which sets of holes your bolts go through. That way, when you put the new pin box on, it's going to have the same height or the same rise/drop as the old one. So chances are you should be able to tell from the worn paint where our old Vultures move. But if you have a paint marker, just go ahead and mark those. At this time, if you purchased a different truck recently or the pin box is a little bit different dimensions, you can actually go ahead and measure now. That way you can ensure you're installing it in the correct holes. You can actually move the pin box up or down within these holes to give you more height or decrease the height. But again, that's really going to be depending on your specific setup there. So if you still have the same truck, most of these pin boxes are the same dimension, so you should just be reusing the same ones. But if you did want to go ahead and lower or raise the pin box within the wings here on the trailer, now would be the time to do so. So coming out the loft on the trailer here at the back, we have our electrical cable. This is our 7-way, and then we have our breakaway. So you want to make sure those aren't getting tangled up within the pin box here. So I just have them sort of going towards the back of the trailer and just sort of wrapped up on the side here. That way they're not going to interfere with the installation of our pin box. Now with a few extra sets of hands, we can go ahead and raise our pin box into position. We'll be using a forklift here because we have one available. Now keep in mind your pin box does not come with new hardware, so you will need to secure it using the hardware from your old pin box. So once I get all of our nuts and our washers on, we'll go ahead and lower our support device for the pin box, and then we can tighten everything down. So something we do want to be aware of when we're reusing our old hardware, so this particular pin box has sort of a double plate construction. So there's 2 plates here, which is going to add to the thickness. Therefore, we need to be sure that our bolt is going to be long enough that the nut can secure on it properly. So depending on how long your old bolts were or the construction of your old pin box, you may or may not need to search for new hardware. Just make sure you have proper thread engagement with your bolts. So now we need to begin tightening and torquing all of our hardware. Now the size tools you're going to need for this are going to vary depending on which bolts you use. Now I will say some of these bolts back here are kind of hard to get a wrench on, so you may need to use a combination of tools. We're going to be using a box wrench inside, and then we're going to be using our ratchet on the outside. So just take the time and snug up each of these bolts. Once we get them snug, we'll come back with our torque wrench and we'll torque everything to spec. We'll go ahead now and just begin torquing each fastener. That's going to do it today for our look and our installation of the Curt Flex Air 5th wheel pin box.